There was a title card that I put at the beginning of the pilot of The Incredible Hulk, which said something to the effect of, "Within each of us oft times dwells a mighty and raging fury." And I think that that's something that everyone has felt at one time or another, that sense of just wanting to explode. There's a visceral connection that people have to that feeling of anger. I think that's part of the original thing that people connected to. What I was anxious to do, though, was to connect people with the humanity of the leading character. When Universal first came to me with the idea of doing one of the Marvel Comics superheroes, Frank Price called me and said, "We've just acquired the rights to 5 of them. Which one would you like to do?" And I said, "Gee, none of them, Frank. I just don't connect to people in spandex and primary colors." And my wife, Susie, had given me a book, and I was in the middle of reading it. And this is Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. The story of Jean Valjean being pursued by Inspector Javert and living life as a fugitive.
I'm Jack McGee from the National Register. I'm checking some stories that a huge hulking creature was seen in this area.
So I had all of that sort of Victor Hugo story in my head, and I realized, well, there was a way to take a little bit of Victor Hugo, a little bit of Robert Louis Stevenson, and this ludicrous thing called The Incredible Hulk, and turn it into a serious psychological adult drama. I wanted it to not be comic booky in any way. One of the first things I did was change David Banner's name from Bruce Banner. Why? Because the Bruce Banner thing is like Lois Lane, Peter Parker. It's all alliterative. It all harkens back to comic book roots. And I was trying to do everything I could to get the show away from comic book roots and that kind of feeling. The show had to live in the real world. I fought endlessly and unfortunately lost the battle about the color of the Hulk. I called Stan Lee, who was a wonderful guy, and I said, "Stan, what is he, the envious Hulk? Why is he green? Is he the jealous Hulk? I said, when people are angry, they get red with rage, the color of rage is red. He would be flushed with anger. And also, P.S., of course, it's a human color. Green is not. So I was anxious to try to pull it that way. And Stan said, well, you know why we made him green was because he started out gray, but the printer couldn't make a good gray, and they thought he could make a pretty consistent green, so they said, we can make green, and I said, okay. And I said, gee, Stan, that's really organic, and I couldn't win that battle, so the Hulk unfortunately had to remain green. There was no green makeup available, and we finally found some in Germany, and it was grease paint, as opposed to the pancake makeup that people use most generally in film and television. The difference is that grease paint is waterproof, which is nice if you happen to be in the water, but it also is grease, and it comes off on everything. I have sweatshirts upstairs that still have smudges of green where I bumped into Lou Ferrigno, 30 years ago, and everybody on the crew, I guarantee you, has clothes that are like that. And it was a nightmare because Louis first had to get the prosthetic makeup put on that was designed by Werner Kepler, and then he would have to get the green makeup on top of that, and then he would get this wonderful wig that we never got right. I was always so frustrated that no matter what we it ended up looking like a fright wig, And then he had to get the body makeup, which took 2 people, half an hour, 45 minutes to put on every day, and that long to take off. And he had to be cleaned up between each take, and it came off in his dressing room. His whole inside of his motorhome was completely covered in plastic because we had to be able to hose it down every night and start over the next day. But from the standpoint of the actors, doing the Hulk was great. Bix was there, was prepared. There was never any of that "I'll be in my trailer" nonsense. And Louis it was his first gig, so he was anxious to be there and really do the best he possibly could. Bix and Lou were not on the set together a whole lot of the time because generally they would overlap. Bix would come on into a scene in the morning and take it to the point where he would reach a Hulk out, and then Louis would take over, and Bix, of course, could go home because we didn't need him for the rest of the day. In season 2, I think we really hit our stride. Married was a very strong opening piece for us to start with, and Bix and I looked long and hard to find the right woman to play opposite him. And we had seen some film that Marriott had recently done. Her agent sent her the script, and Marriott said, I don't want to read anything called The Incredible Hulk.
I'm really very sorry.
Her agent said, "Read it, this is your Emmy." And Marriott read it and went on, of course, to win the Emmy for Best Actress in a Drama Series.
Oh, my God.
A friend of mine was a psychologist who was doing hypnotherapeutic work on people with cancer. He was actually using hypnosis to help people control their cancer. And I realized, wow, this is great. I can put Bill Bixby under hypnosis and go inside his mind. And for the first time, I can have Bix and Louis in the same frame. One of the challenges of shooting Married was I needed an internal landscape. I needed a place where they could meet together. And I sort of envisioned as I wrote it a surreal kind of desert landscape. There's not a lot of those around Southern California. I mean, I was thinking sand dunes. And then we discovered this area near Brawley, just north of the Mexican border, which is a small state park, which is indeed sand dunes. I got down there in the morning to shoot, and Ed Jeffers, my location manager, came up to me and said, "Kenny, we have a real problem. There's a man here that says we can't, it's his land and we can't film on it." And I said, "What are you talking about? This is a state park. He can't." They said, "Kenny, I'm telling you, he's livid. He tells us we cannot film here." I said, "Well, Ed, talk to him. You're the location manager." And he said, "No, please, if you please come talk to him." So I reach the edge of the sand dunes and I look out and I see this guy riding toward me, dressed in Arab robes, and he's waving this scimitar and he's riding on a donkey, coming toward me over the sand dunes, shouting, "Get off my land! No filming on my land!" And I'm going, what the? And he gets closer and I realize that it's Bob Steinhauer, who was my unit production manager, producer on The Incredible Hulk, who had decided that this would be a funny way to welcome everybody down to Brawley. And none of the crew will ever forget the visit by the Ayatollah Steinhauer. Looking back on the Hulk, and it is something that I look back on very, very fondly because we did some really extraordinary work. It's very hard to do an episodic television series and have every single episode be as good as it possibly can be and as good as all the others. Certainly you have some that are just not as good no matter how hard you work. But for the most part, our batting average was really good.